Today's program is sponsored by sunsetlakecbd.com. They're a farm that is located outside of Burlington, Vermont. They supply dairy to Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And in 2018, they decided that they were going to diversify. They started to grow hemp. Their hemp is 100% pesticide free. They only use organic fertilizers. You can go to their website at cbd.com and see just how their third-party test results for all of their products. And they're working with the University of Vermont on regenerative farming practices. On top of all that, their business practices are exceptional. $15 minimum wage. The employees own the majority of the company. And their product is awesome. They have Farmer's Roast CBD coffee. They have topical salves, which I have given now to multiple people. For me personally, I'm not saying it's going to work for you, but for me personally, it has been very helpful with my eczema. And I have given it to people who've told me it's been good on their back pain. We've gotten emails from people saying it's good for their arthritis. It has arnica and beeswax, as well as CBD. Also gummy bears, tinctures, and smokables. You don't like that feeling of getting high and feeling paranoid, but you want that body relaxation? Boom, there you have it. Matt, give your smokable quick endorsement as a CBD skeptic and now a converted CBD smoker. I mean, you use it as a supplement to other things you smoke.
Right, and the smalls are perfect for that because they're nice little nuggets already sort of stripped from the stems. They can just slip right in your grinder.
It's incredible. I mean, the stuff. I mean, it looks like it's pot, but it's not. It doesn't have the THC's part. Head to sunsetlakecbd.com. Use the coupon code Left is Best. Fans of the show, that's what they wanted their coupon code to be. And I was psyched. One word, Left is Best, 20% off. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. On with the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Mark Stern, staff writer at Slate on Courts and the Law, on the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, which are currently underway. I think at the moment they may be on break. Meanwhile, Donald Trump in Florida, he's feeling powerful. He wants to kiss people. He's also dropping further in the polls. Another day and more panic amongst the Republican House prospects. Meanwhile, the California Republicans admit they're the ones who installed fake official ballot boxes around the state. Donald Trump pours money to the farmers he's harmed over the past 4 years in the election run-up. A federal court allows Governor Abbott to limit the Texas ballot drop boxes across the state. But meanwhile, in Georgia, early in-person voting explodes. And meanwhile, in Wisconsin, one half of the Wisconsin requested absentee ballots have already been returned. One half, 1.3 requested, over 680,000 returned. That's as of yesterday. And meanwhile, the last day of Virginia voter registration shuts down early. Why? Because of a supposedly accidental fiber cable cut. Meanwhile, Johnson & Johnson's corona vaccine study is paused because of a problem with some of the subjects. And no one likes Tom Tillis. Cal Cunningham's lead grows in North Carolina despite a supposed texting scandal. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. We've got a lot to get to. Hearings have been ongoing in this morning. This is day 2 of the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, Senate Judiciary hearings. Donald Trump obviously wants to seat another conservative on the court prior to the election in the event that there's any type of Supreme Court case involving this election. Mitch McConnell obviously wants to seat this Supreme Court justice so that he can cement his legacy of having ushered in significantly over, 215 approximately federal judges, 3 Supreme Court justices, including 1 seat that was kept open that may have, in many respects, made it very possible for Donald Trump to win in 2016. Certainly leaving a seat open, leaving the Supreme Court with only 8 justices for a year, orchestrated the tilting of the court to a 6-3 conservative majority. It's not happened yet. It's likely to happen. Today on the program, we'll have Mark Stern here to discuss his perspective on how the Democrats are doing and what they should do. But I've got to tell you, I've not been terribly impressed, to be frank. I don't think that they're going to hurt themselves in any way. And that seems to be the only Democratic strategy. Do not do anything that will help us or harm us. Do nothing. Be there and do nothing. And that seems to be the plan. It is depressing. It is a failed look. Even in losses, there's an opportunity. Sometimes, and particularly in losses, there's an opportunity. We will talk to Mark Stern about what he thinks the Democrats should be doing, what I think they should be doing. Just got an IM that we generally only take this. We generally only take these during the second hour of the show. But this is a good question. Sam, do you think if you had a normal job outside of politics and commentary that you would be more depressed about the state of things or less? I imagine that the more you dive into how messed up things are, the worse you may feel. But hopefully the fact that you have to be on camera every day might give you incentive to keep yourself off the ledge. It is both those things. I can only imagine what I would be doing now if I wasn't doing this show on a daily basis and hadn't been for nearly 10 years. Our 10-year anniversary is going to be on Election Day. We've got some special coverage planned, obviously, for the election, but also to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. It is true. I think it makes me a little bit more depressed to read into all of these things. Same time, I'm not convinced I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And at that point, I'd be yelling at my TV and having absolutely no feedback. And therefore, I think I would probably be a little more depressed about it. I don't know. Meanwhile, we're on the cusp of a second wave of COVID that seems to be building across the country, particularly in the Northeast, as the weather turns cold. It's there's only so much that we can do when we have a significant part of the population that just feels like it's not that serious. I don't need to wear a mask, whatever. Let's just look in on Donald Trump, who was down in Florida. I guess this was this yesterday? Monday. Yes. And here he is. He wants to kiss people. Do we have that clip?
Yes.
All right, let's play the clip where Donald Trump is talking about how strong he is and how much he wants to kiss people. Maybe we don't have that clip. Do we not have it? Brandon? All right, it appears we don't have that clip.
But if you want to get out there, get out. One thing with me, the nice part, I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women and everybody. I'll just give you a big fat kiss. No, but there is something nice. I don't have to be locked up in my basement, and I wouldn't allow that to happen anyway. I wouldn't allow it to happen.
There he is, Donald Trump, really feeling his oats. And then he goes on to say that he is going to, well, of course, I mean, this is, I guess, the 2016 or 2020 version of lock her up at this point. I mean, this may be very damaging to both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's ability to win in this 2020 election.
In legally sworn in administration, we were sworn in. They tried before the fact. They tried after the fact. We were an administration, and then they say, we want to know if you will agree with a friendly transfer of power. For 4 years, they've been trying to get us out of office. 4 years they've been trying to get us out. But we'll take care of it all after the election. We caught them cold. Bad people, crooked Hillary. And by the way, Obama and Biden knew everything that was happening, okay? Just in case you had any question. We'll take care of it after the election. Joe Biden and the Democrat Socialists, but that gives you another reason to go out and vote. We got to get in. Because we don't, they'll just sweep it under the rug.
You need
Joe
more
Biden
reasons?
and the Democrat Socialists will kill your jobs, dismantle your police departments, dissolve your borders, you know that, release criminal aliens, confiscate your guns, no more Second Amendment, get used to it, destroy your suburbs, and drive God from the public square. That's what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, I guess that's an upgrade. Wasn't Joe Biden at one point going to kill God?
Yes.
Didn't Donald Trump say he was going to kill God at one point or something to that effect?
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Yeah. There's Donald Trump seeming exceedingly energetic. I mean, good for him. A lot of energy, almost artificially energetic. That's the way I would describe that, the energy that I'm getting from him.
He seems pumped up.
He's pumped up. Yeah, definitely pumped up.
I'm the spirit of the Lord.
Yeah, I just, for whatever reason, it reminds me of some of the folks I remember from my college days. Not sure why.
Got a big test coming.
Yeah, got a big test coming.
The rhetorical skills.
Anyways, folks, as you know, we're getting into the holiday season. More people are going to be mailing stuff, which means a busy post office. There's reasons these days you may not want to go out and get into crowded areas. Luckily, stamps.com brings the post office and now UPS shipping right to your computer. So you can mail or ship anything from the convenience of your home or your or any size office for that matter. Doesn't matter. You can use your computer to print official postage. You ready for this? Just between 9 to 5. No. 24/7 at any time of the day. You wake up in the morning. The other day, I emailed Brendan 4:30 a.m. to about a guest request. He writes me back at 4:35 in the morning. I'm like, what are you doing up? What am I doing up? If I had wanted to mail something, I could have gone and printed out some postage on stamps.com. Stamps.com, you get 5 cents off every first class stamp and up to 40% off priority mail and up to 62% off UPS shipping rates. So you don't have to spend a minute of your holiday season at the post office this year or the UPS office. Sign up for stamps.com instead. There's no risk. And with my promo code Majority Report, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. There's no long-term commitments. There's no contract. You just go to stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Majority Report. That's stamps.com. Enter Majority Report. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. Meanwhile, and this is one, this is not a product that I have personally used. However, we have had our official bra tester on the program test these out. As you know, Third Love has the perfect fit promise. Third Love bra, every Third Love bra is made with signature memory foam cups. They have no slip straps and a scratch-free band. There are bras in over 80 sizes. And here's the thing. If you're not sure about your size, Third Love's Fit Finder quiz will help you find the size and styles that are right for you. You just answer a couple simple questions, and you find your perfect fit in 60 seconds. Did you know that breast shape matters when finding a good fit? I did not know this, but apparently some folks do. Third Love helps you identify your breast size and shape, and then it finds the styles that fit your body. In fact, I will tell you this, that our one of the things that our bra tester said, the idea that I had 60 days to try out the bras drew me in. But in the end, I don't think I've ever had a better experience buying clothing online. Certainly not when it comes to bras. The Fit Finder worked perfectly, like a charm. The choice of styles, amazing. Both the bras I ordered were the perfect fit. They are incredibly comfortable and cute and subtle. And I want to hit the perfect fit because that never, ever happens when I order bras online. So now you can find your new favorite bra with high quality, comfy styles starting at just $45, from modern stripes to lace that actually feels soft to their #1 rated 24/7 classic t-shirt bra. And remember, Third Love's perfect fit promise means if you don't love it, every customer has 60 days to return, and returns and exchanges are free and easy. Third Love knows there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now they're offering my listeners 10% off your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/majority. Do it right now, and you'll find your perfect fitting bra. Get 10% off your first purchase. That's Third Love, spelled out THIRD love.com/majority for 10% off today. And lastly, I want to introduce the latest in butt cleaning technology, as it were, water. This has been a bit of a revelation to me. I was always a skeptic, but it's hard to believe that when we go to the bathroom in this country, most of us wipe instead of wash. For years, bidets have been available, but hideously expensive, costing thousands of dollars. The Hello Tushy modern bidet attachment is here to democratize the blessings bestowed by bidets and offering clean buttholes, if you will, to everyone. Hello Tushy cleans your butt with a precise stream of fresh water for just $79. And that's not per visit. It's just $79 one time. It attaches right to your existing toilet. It just all you got to do, unscrew the lid, slide it on, boom, screw it back up. You don't even need any tools. You can do it with your fingers. It requires no electricity, no additional plumbing. It cuts toilet paper use by 80%. So the Hello Tushy bidet pays for itself in a few months. And in the event that you ever have, I mean, who could ever imagine some type of run on toilet paper? But more than that, Hello Tushy, because you don't wipe at all, gives you a hands-free pooping experience, as it were. And every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. Join millions of happy Hello Tushy customers right now and have a clean butt with every flush. I got to say, folks, I was skeptical, but Kyle told me at the beginning of COVID, he said he got a high-priced bidet. And I was like, I am not making that kind of investment. He's like, I'll tell you, the bidet is great. And I have nothing to compare it to, but it has been fantastic. And I wish I could take it with me, frankly, wherever I go. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Get 10% off. This is a special offer for our listeners. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. All right, just a very quick break, and then we'll be back with Mark Stern. I'd like to welcome back to the program Mark Joseph Stern. Mark, welcome. He is the staff writer from Slate on courts and the law. And I imagine you have been following the Amy Coney Barrett hearing this morning. I think they're on break right at the moment for lunch, and appreciate your joining us. Okay, let's start, I guess, just with a review of what the Democrats are doing, and then we'll talk about the stakes that are involved here. What did you think about day one? And frankly, maybe we can start even at this point. What do you think about them showing up at all?
Well, I had really debated with my colleagues about whether they should show up, because we all know this is an illegitimate confirmation process. These hearings should be treated as illegitimate. This entire thing is outrageously hypocritical and just a brazen partisan power grab. So the question is why Democrats even show up. And I think the answer is they only show up if they've really got something to contribute. If they're not just going to legitimize the hearings, but actually help the American people understand why this nominee is so incredibly dangerous, why Amy Coney Barrett is going to fundamentally overhaul the law, overturn decades of progressive precedent, and really kind of stymie the progressive political project from day one of Biden's presidency if he wins. I haven't seen Democrats doing that. I haven't seen them doing much of anything at all. I've seen them creating a lot of footage for their reelection ads. They've talked a lot about the Affordable Care Act. Obviously, that must poll well among voters, but I don't know that everybody understands the connection between Barrett's confirmation and the ACA. I don't think Democrats have spelled it out very clearly. And at this stage, I'm starting to think, hey, maybe they actually shouldn't have showed up, because this whole thing is a disaster.
All right. So I was wondering if we were how big of an argument we were going to get in about this at the top. From my perspective, and then I want to go through and do what the Democrats should have been doing, because this, you know, when I look at this stuff, I see a failure on behalf of Democrats, but I see a failure on behalf of leftists, broadly speaking. I feel like I'm a failure, because of, you know, I've been doing this now for 15, 16 years, and there is no awareness of the implications of what's about to happen. And that is depressing to me. But I'm going to move past that. Let's just have a little bit. I mean, here's my argument as to why they shouldn't have gone in the first place. You got Amy Klobuchar saying this is a sham on day one, right? And they're all saying some iteration of that. I'm sorry. If it's a sham, you don't participate. As soon as you participate, your whole argument that it's a sham goes out the window, because how is it a sham? You're there, you're doing what you're doing. Like, you know, the bucket's there. You're just filling it with a slightly different liquid. And every time it's with a different liquid. The bottom line is they should have never showed up. You know, I can imagine in some alternate universe, perhaps there is, like, you know, a genius orator who's going to explain to the American public and blah, blah, blah. But they could have done that on the steps of the Senate. And they could have said, this is a sham. If you sent in Merrick Garland right now, we would not be holding this hearing. You could send in Pam Karlan for all we care. We would not hold this hearing because this is a sham. You either make an argument that the process is a sham or you don't. And if you don't, then what do you bring into the party? Like you say, nothing. I tried to watch Dianne Feinstein and Leahy this today. And I'll tell you something, like, I'm really interested in this stuff. And I was just like, what? Like, what? Like, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
So, Sam, you are not a failure. Don't let anyone tell you that you're a failure, okay? You're a great American success story, sweetie. Don't worry.
I appreciate that.
Look, it's the Democratic Party that's failed. We all know this. The Democratic Party has not explained to their base why courts matter in a way that is coherent and persuasive. The Republican Party has. Why? Because the Republican Party has Roe v. Wade, right? Yep. An entire conservative movement has really based itself on the drive to overturn Roe versus Wade, okay? There are millions of people who have grown up thinking that babies are being murdered every year because of the Supreme Court, and that their entire lives are devoted to changing that by changing the court and overruling Roe. There's no equivalent on the left. There's no single case that the left can rally around and rally the troops around and get them excited to defend at the court. Yes, there's Obergefell. Yes, there's the remnants of Roe, but it's not the same. There's not the same urgency. And so I just don't know, like, you're convincing me, you're bringing me over to your side, because looking back, I don't know why I expected Pat Leahy to ask good questions at this hearing. Pat Leahy has never asked good questions at one of these hearings. I don't know why he's on this committee. We may recall that he was the one who honored Republicans' blue slips under Obama. He is one of the main reasons why Mitch McConnell held open like 100 seats for Donald Trump, right? These people do not understand the urgency themselves. How are they going to make voters see it?
I think that's absolutely right. I think there's a failure on their part. Frankly, I would like to put all non-attorneys on that committee because their experience as prosecutors is not effective, and they are beholden to this notion that this is an avocation, that the law is something that, frankly, it is not. It may have been at one time, but it is not that now, and certainly it is not in the context of that Judiciary Committee. I would also argue, though, and I think you're right, there is nothing that animates the left in the way that Roe v. Wade animates the right. And they have nurtured that, but I also think that there's that is just the nature of the beast. However, the Voting Rights Act was a monumental achievement in this country that ended 80 years of suppression of Black people's ability to vote in this country. And the Supreme Court has begun to unwind it. They unwound it in 2013. And there was a lot of celebration about the Voting Rights Act. I remember John Lewis going across the bridge, a couple of years ago. There was no tie-in to that notion that the reason why we are, every day now I have a different story of voter suppression in these states. And 95% of the reason why those even exist, those stories even exist, is because of what they did to the Voting Rights Act. And where is anybody sort of making that connection? Because they're going to do it again. And they're going to attack what remains of the Voting Rights Act. They're going to do it again. And so let's pivot to talking about that very question. What are we going to get? And we can start with Obergefell, because you pointed out the other day on Twitter a dissent that took place in a case that I think it was Thomas and Alito signed on to, in a case that they were looking at. I couldn't find the whole thing because you didn't put a link on it, but you clipped it. But I read it. I was waiting to talk to you about it. So let's start there. Tell us about Obergefell and why, how Amy Coney Barrett is going to implicate that.
Right. So Obergefell is the 2015 Supreme Court decision that legalized same-sex marriage in every state, right? It is the reason why marriage equality is the law of the land now. It was a 5-4 decision. It was a very contentious split, right? Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion, has since retired. He's been replaced by Justice Brett Kavanaugh. If Justice Ginsburg is replaced by Barrett, then Obergefell will be in serious jeopardy. And we've already seen Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito say, hey, we're really eager to roll back marriage equality, if not overturn it altogether. And they decided to make this proclamation when looking at Kim Davis's case. So do you remember Kim Davis? She is the Kentucky
Secretary
clerk
of State, or she was a secretary of a county, I guess, in Kentucky, who refused to honor marriage or to issue marriage certificates, right?
Yeah.
To sex couples.
Yeah, she refused to do her job. Her job as a county clerk was to issue marriage licenses. That's like that's the bulk of your job when you are the county clerk of Rowan County, Kentucky. Anyway, she refused to give them to same-sex couples, right? She was successfully sued. And Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito just last week highlighted her case and said she is a victim of Obergefell. This woman is a victim of marriage equality, and she was wrongly deemed a bigot by the state and by the courts for refusing to, issue this marriage license when she was just following her Christian faith. And then they said, and this was the really alarming part, this court has an obligation to address the ruinous consequences of Obergefell, and only this court is in a position to fix the problem. What does that mean? Very clearly, I think it means that these two justices think the court has to overturn Obergefell, or at least roll it way back, in order to protect people like Kim Davis from basically being called bigots on Twitter. And this is a pretty alarming thing.
Okay, so what does roll it back mean? Because people should understand, it is all going to be foundationed on this notion of religious freedom.
Right.
That you are almost definitionally not a bigot if it is your religion, and it ultimately can be like, well, what if it's just my moral code? Right. And people, I hope, their wheels are starting to turn here as to what can fall in that instance. But go.
So two ways that the court can, and I fear will, roll back marriage equality. The first is what you just mentioned, saying that religious freedom overrides the right to marry and the right to be treated equally. And we're actually about to see a case about this. The Supreme Court will hear a case in November that asks whether Philadelphia is constitutionally obligated to provide taxpayer money to a Catholic foster care agency that refuses to work with same-sex couples. Okay, think about that for a second. The people in this case, the plaintiffs, are asking the Supreme Court to rule that cities and states are obligated to funnel taxpayer dollars to foster agencies that turn away same-sex couples, agencies that make it harder for foster children to find loving homes and loving parents because of their own bigotry and discrimination, right? That is an example of the kind of case that can roll back marriage equality. That's a little indirect. More directly, you could have a decision that allows people like Kim Davis to refuse to provide a marriage license, that forces same-sex couples to go out of the county or even out of the state to get a license, right? You could have a state that refuses to provide health insurance to the partners of same-sex couples or their children because they're deemed less worthy. This was something that a Texas Supreme Court justice argued for after Obergefell, that the children of same-sex couples deserve fewer constitutional rights because they aren't their biological offspring. That leads me to the second way that marriage equality can be rolled back. There is a case on the Supreme Court's doorstep right now in which Indiana is asking for the ability to refuse to place same-sex parents on their child's birth certificate. Now, look, it's 2020. Birth certificates are not about genetics. If a straight couple adopts a child or conceives via artificial insemination, they are both placed as parents on their birth certificate. All same-sex couples are asking for is the same right, the same privilege that they're put on their kid's birth certificate, because that's how you establish legal parenthood. And Indiana is fighting that. And it is asking the Supreme Court to let them force same-sex couples to adopt their own children rather than be acknowledged as their actual parents. And this is very disturbing. The Supreme Court has not yet turned away that case. It actually asked the couple in the case to respond to Indiana's arguments, a very unusual move which suggests that the court may take up this case in the coming months. So there is an onslaught from the lower courts and from red states seeking to pull back the rights of same-sex couples. And this is something I think Amy Coney Barrett is very eager to hop onto.
Let me ask you this, just so that we can sort of demonstrate the implications of this. the right of same-sex couples to marry is established, but this Catholic foster agency says, okay, but my religion says I'm not going to recognize their marriage. Therefore, I don't have to provide them services, right? I don't have to make them the cake or, place foster children there. I get, and okay, and I'm now the Catholic Church speaking again, or let's say some other church. Yeah, I know, I get that you can have two races marry, but it is against my religion. In fact, when my dad went to Bob Jones University, they wouldn't allow multiracial dating there because that was no good. And so we don't want to provide foster care children to mixed race couples. How is that any way different?
It is not. You and I know that. But if you think that gay people are sexual deviants who don't deserve equal rights, then you view it differently. And we know that several Supreme Court justices believe that. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett used a phrase today that raised a lot of eyebrows: sexual preference. Right?
Let's play a clip. Let's play a clip of her doing that. I was going to bring that up. Here's a clip of her doing this over and over again. This is a 47-year-old woman, incidentally. This is not someone who has been theoretically in a different, universe. Right. Play this clip, Brendan.
I have never discriminated on the basis of sexual preference and would not ever discriminate on the basis of sexual preference.
Now, what's the implications of saying sexual preference as opposed to what has been the terminology that has been used widely for decades, sexual orientation?
Well, I think it's obvious. Preference suggests that it's something you can choose, that you may prefer to date people of the same sex, and that if you really apply yourself, you could change that preference, right? This is the foundation of anti-gay conversion therapy, that sexuality, when people are attracted to people of the same sex, that's deviance, that's an aberration, and it's something that they can change and fix. That is the connotation of sexual preference. That is why we do not use it anymore, because it is insulting and offensive. It's like saying the gay lifestyle or avowed homosexual, right? Those are once common terms, but they all suggested that homosexuality is something you choose, something that you dabble in or decide to go, you jump into it. You're like, okay, today I'm a homosexual. The homosexual agenda is all mine. That is bigotry. That is extremely offensive. It's the kind of language that Justice Antonin Scalia used. He refused to use the word sexual orientation in any opinion ever. He put the phrase orientation in scare quotes in his opinions. Instead, he preferred same-sex or homosexual conduct. And that gets to the question you asked before. The reason why these individuals think that homosexuality is different from race is because they acknowledge that race is fundamental. They acknowledge that race is a sort of set trait, but they don't think the same thing about sexuality. They think that homosexuality is a preference and a choice and something that can be changed, that it's just about conduct, not identity, and thus that it doesn't deserve the same constitutional protections.
Okay, so let's move on from that. That fight is, I think. I mean, it's they're mentioning I call it Obergefell because I don't know how to pronounce things. But in just days ago, let's talk about I don't know. We can talk about the Chevron deference, which is going to be one that I think for a lot of folks who are voting for Biden. And maybe doing so without a lack of enthusiasm, it is because they feel that there is a whole host of issues that are incredibly urgent and dire. One of them is things like global warming, among other things, of course, but global warming is one where, we feel like the clock is ticking. There is a host of things that an EPA who has been tasked with dealing with global warming. I mean, you could just say right now, Congress could pass a bill and say to the EPA, deal with global warming, because they don't necessarily know the multitude of different things that are contributing to it as a Congress. We're not going to list every single thing because if we leave one off the list, EPA is full of scientists. They may find one, right? That's where Chevron deference comes in. Will you explain that concept and then explain how these guys are going to attack it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really two different issues here, all wrapped in one. Chevron deference basically means that the federal judiciary should defer to an agency's reasonable interpretation of federal law. So, like you said, Congress doesn't pass an air quality bill and specify down to the micrometer or whatever exactly how many milliliters of mercury can go in the water, right? They say, look, mercury is a problem. Carbon is a problem, whatever. EPA, you need to figure out how to limit it and how much we can safely have in this country, right? So Chevron deference is what allows the courts to uphold those regulations. So Chevron deference tells the courts, look, Congress told the EPA to limit mercury. Well, EPA said we need to limit mercury by doing X, Y, and Z. That seems like a pretty reasonable way to deal with this problem. We're going to uphold it. You take away Chevron deference, you turn those judges into a scientific review board. It means that those judges have to carefully analyze and scrutinize the scientific determinations that the EPA has made in order to limit pollutants. And judges are really bad at that. They aren't scientists. And that is why the second issue that is very similar alarms me maybe even more, something called the non-delegation doctrine. Okay, it sounds like it was designed to put you to sleep. But this is an idea that has been endorsed by the 5 conservatives who are already on the court, that Congress can't even tell the EPA to regulate mercury or carbon in the first place, that Congress has to be the one to do all of the heavy lifting, that Congress cannot entrust the scientists to figure out how to keep us safe, but has to do it itself. And Congress cannot do that. So this is really a kind of judicial recipe for eradicating and abolishing all of the environmental regulations that we live under today.
All right. So be a little more specific with the non-delegation clause. So, for instance, let's say Congress says it is our will that we have clean water. And by clean water, we mean water that if human beings drink it, if children drink it, who may be more sensitive to toxins, they drink it, that they're not going to have a disease or any type of neurological dysfunction. It's just going to be healthy. That's what the Congress wants to do. How does the non-delegation idea impact that?
So what the conservatives would say is that the power of the federal government is split between the branches. Schoolhouse Rock stuff, right? Congress legislates and creates the law, and the executive branch enforces it. What they argue is that when Congress tells the EPA, okay, you need to figure out how to give us clean air, it is transferring or delegating its legislative powers to another branch of government. Because the EPA, like almost all of these agencies, Department of Labor, whatever, that is part of the executive branch, and the executive branch isn't supposed to legislate. So these conservatives have devised this doctrine. It's very ahistorical. It's a really kind of new idea. But they've devised this doctrine that says if Congress wants to legislate, it has to do all of the legislating, and it's not allowed to hand off any of this legislative power to these administrative agencies, which again is just a recipe for no legislating at all.
So in other words, they can't say to the EPA, make sure our water's clean. They have to define it and have to down to there can be no lead above 0.3 microns. There can be no blankety blank above 0.3, 2 microns. There cannot be, if it's still water, it cannot contain this amount of money of chemical. If it's running water, it cannot contain that. They have to predict what chemicals might be dumped in the future, because you can't say every chemical can't be present in water, because you just don't know. And you just don't know what chemicals there are. There are chemicals that Congress may never even heard of that are used in fracking, that because because there's intellectual property, in terms of they don't have to reveal what's in there. So it basically functionally makes it impossible for Congress to carry out or for our society to carry out the agenda of clean water, healthy anything is completely out the window, because Congress itself would have to figure out what constitutes healthy, and they're not scientists, and they don't have a budget. There's no science department in the basement of Capitol Hill where they can send this down and have them work on it, right? I mean, that's what the EPA functions as.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And now we need to take this and expand it across the entire government. Labor laws. Congress says prevent exploitation and overtime abuse. Non-delegation doctrine, throw that out. Financial regulations. Congress says don't let the banks rob citizens blind. Don't let them sell defective products and services. Non-delegation doctrine, courts, throw that out. Everything you can imagine, like all of the regulations that we live under in 2020, they are all suspect under this doctrine. And it is a doctrine that 5 sitting justices have already endorsed. And if Barrett joins them, that's game over. And it means that if Republicans take Congress in a few years and we discover some chemical that's in our cookware that's killing us and Congress doesn't pass a law to stop it, the EPA is powerless to do anything. Pretty much all of us are, because that's what the conservatives in the judiciary say.
What else do you see? I mean, we could talk about voting rights. I mean, we could, what is, I mean, do you have another? I mean, if that's not enough, I mean, for me, between the Chevron deference and non-delegation, so much of what we perceive as government becomes virtually impossible. I mean, it's conceivable, right, that, Congress can come out and say, we're going to pass a law against C8. And you can't use C8 in manufacturing dishware, like you said, or cookingware. But there's no ability to react quickly, as slow as things are now, right? I mean, because when the EPA does this stuff, then they get challenged by industry lawyers. So it takes time. The Obama administration issues basically says, task the EPA with focusing on this aspect of dealing with climate change. They get tied up for years by lawyers, and then 2 or 3 years later, they're about to institute it. This happened with the Clean Water Act, I think it was, and then Trump reverses it. So what else is at the top of the list in your mind? I mean, I guess voting rights would be up there as well.
Absolutely. And I think we can really wrap guns and voting together, because that's something that Amy Coney Barrett did. She wrote this really extraordinary dissent in which she argued that it was unconstitutional for the government to ban convicted felons from owning firearms. And what was most remarkable about this opinion to me was that she actually said the right to bear arms is more fundamental and protected than the right to vote. And in fact, the right to vote is conditional, and it's really conditioned on you being a good citizen. And the government can take it away if you aren't. But the right to bear arms is fundamental, and the government cannot take that away without a really good reason. And I think that forecasts how she's going to rule on these decisions, and I think it shows you why this claim that liberals are the judicial activists is so absurd, right? I mean, conservatives are the judicial activists on the Second Amendment and on gun stuff. They're the ones who are knocking down state laws and federal laws that limit gun access. Meanwhile, they are glad to uphold laws that limit access to democracy, that limit regular citizens' ability to participate in our democracy. That's exactly backwards, right? Voting is the right that preserves all other rights. If you don't have it, then we don't have a democracy anymore. That's the way that we throw the bad guys out and make policy. And so for the conservatives and for Barrett to say, well, the state can take away your right to vote, but it can't take away your right to bear arms, that just seems so perverse. And it seems like a recipe, not just for gun violence, but for kind of a wind down of self-governance itself in the United States.
Let's talk about, I mean, I think, we've seen Mike Lee do it quite a bit. There was a couple of themes that I saw just this morning. Lindsey Graham followed this theme, and Mike Lee did. Mike Lee also, I think, is setting the table for basically getting Americans used to the idea that these 6 Supreme Court justices are going to fundamentally alter the country, where he talked about, tweeting out ranked democracies. I mean, I think this guy, and he did it late at night, so I suspect he's up late, I don't know, having a couple glasses of scotch, just sort of ruminating, trying out how they're going to justify the Supreme Court essentially fundamentally altering the way that we perceive our government. But today, Graham and Mike Lee both hit this idea that it's ridiculous for our opponents to say that you're going to get in there and change things, or these cases have to wind their way through you can't go in there and just flick a switch. That's true. She can't go in there and flick a switch and undercut, if not overturn, Roe v. Wade. She can't go in there on day one and flick a switch and Obergefell is threatened, or we go back to the Lochner era. But she's 47. She's she's substantially younger than me. She's going to be there for a long time, and so there's going to be a lot of opportunity to do this. What difference does she particularly make? Like this sixth vote?
So, obviously there's currently 5 conservatives on the court, but Chief Justice John Roberts, who is conservative, has still shown himself to be a bit of an institutionalist, right? So he will sometimes factor in the court's legitimacy and the court's prestige when making a decision, and it will lead him to kind of balk at like really far-right rulings. So for instance, Roberts upheld the Affordable Care Act famously, right, in 2012. He did so again in 2015. He recently ruled to block the citizenship question that Trump was trying to add to the census. And he made it very clear that he didn't do so because he hated the question. He did it because the Trump administration lied to him. The Trump administration came into court and lied about why they wanted this question. They said it was to enforce the Voting Rights Act. Roberts said, that's not true. We all know that's not true. Roberts wouldn't deal with this kind of chicanery. I think Barrett would, because she is much more conservative than Roberts on pretty much every issue, even the ones where Roberts is already far to the right. And she seems to be a lot more partisan, a lot more aligned with the Republican Party. I mean, look at what she's willing to do right now, right? Participate actively in this insane power grab as millions of Americans have already voted in this election. She has shown herself to be a cynical hack. And so I think when these future cases come, like the one about the Affordable Care Act that the court will hear in November, or when a corrupt administration lies to the court to try to rig the census, I think she will join the other 4 conservatives who don't care about institutional prestige, who are basically nihilists, who follow the GOP platform. And that frightens me, because as far as we've already fallen here, we've got a lot farther to go. And Amy Coney Barrett is the one who will have the power to sort of drag us down to the rock bottom.
And I just want to remind people about that census question. Roberts had no choice but to acknowledge that they had lied. There was literally this is almost like movie script style. Like you would say, that's a little bit too Deus Ex Machina. The daughter of the guy who constructed a whole plan to disenfranchise voters had literally it all on his computer. He died. She got the computer hard drive and found this treasure trove of stuff that completely contradicted what the Commerce Department and the DOJ was basically telling John Roberts. And he was just basically like, go back, figure out some other reason, and I'll let you do this. But this is embarrassing. And that was basically it. And so people should understand that, this is just a question of he feels a little bit more responsibility. And I think that's why Trump is so concerned about getting a 6th vote on there in the event of an election hearing and in terms of the ACA. Tell us a little bit about this ACA. We just have a couple of minutes here, but tell us the implications, because we hear about the Republicans want to protect pre-existing conditions, but this lawsuit could very theoretically not even theoretically, could within 6 months basically crash the ACA.
Yeah, so when I describe this case, people think it sounds so crazy and stupid that it can't be real, but I promise you it is. About 20 red states, as well as the Donald Trump Department of Justice, are arguing that basically when Congress zeroed out the individual mandate, so Congress in 2017, when it passed the tax cuts, it said also, you don't have to pay any money if you don't have health insurance. The penalty is gone. That by doing that, it destroyed the entire law, and all of the ACA has to fall because it's all unconstitutional. Why is that? These individuals argue, and again, so crazy, but this is what they're saying, that because you do not have to pay money into the individual mandate, right? Because it's gone, there's no penalty for not having health insurance, that it is now a command. And that, the Supreme Court famously upheld it as a tax, right? Because it was collecting revenue. Now that it's not collecting revenue, it is a legal command, and that makes it unconstitutional, which is really dumb, because if you don't follow it, literally nothing happens. But leave that aside. They then argue that because this part of the law is unconstitutional, all of the rest of it has to fall. Medicaid expansion, exchanges on the internet, tax subsidies, right? Protections for pre-existing conditions, the contraceptive, every single part of it has to fall because this one component has been made unconstitutional. That is a nonsensical argument. It is one that conservative judges on the lower courts have accepted. And so I don't really get why Republican senators are now claiming that this is a frivolous lawsuit with no chance of success when their president and their colleagues in red states have been backing it for years and are now taking it to the Supreme Court in a brazen attempt to do through the courts what they could not do through Congress, which is eradicate the ACA.
And let me just add to that point about severability, right? That's the doctrine that says that is this one element of the law, which we have found to be unconstitutional, let's say in this instance, does that doom the rest of the law, or can it be separated out?
Right.
Did Congress, when they passed the law, say like this is all or nothing? And we know specifically Congress's intent here because they're the ones who zeroed it out. They did this and they kept the ACA intact. And by when we say they, obviously 49 wanted to get rid of it, but 51 didn't. And so that's the way that we express they's Congress intent. They knew what they were doing in terms of like keeping the law, but just zeroing that out. So the idea that it's not severable is like that's, if I was a law professor and wanted to teach judicial activism, which is sort of not really a thing, that would be it. It would be fighting the will of Congress. I mean, the only other example I can see is the way that they crashed Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act by saying like, the reason why the Senate reauthorized it because they're afraid to not reauthorize it. I mean, that's
racial entitlement is what Scalia called it. He said it was a racial entitlement and that Congress would never take it away, so the courts have to do it.
All right, we just have 2 minutes left, and this is a conversation I'm probably going to have with you again over the coming months and with others over the coming months because, like I started this conversation off, I am trying to make up for the obvious failure that I, as somebody who opines about this stuff, has not been able to get people to understand and appreciate the implications of the Supreme Court. What do you think about what the Democrats are doing now in the context of the fight that is going to happen amongst Democrats, amongst across, maybe, ideological points as to reforming the Supreme Court by expanding it?
So I may be in a minority here, but I actually think the Democrats are doing a pretty good job threading the needle. And here's why. The fight right now should not be about court expansion. Okay, the Democrats have not won. They do not have Congress. They do not have the presidency. There is right now an extreme radical nominee to the Supreme Court on the brink of confirmation. I think that all of the focus should be on her and that Democrats need to fight tooth and nail to keep her off the Supreme Court. Are they going to lose? Yes, but they need to lose right. And they need to lose in a way that makes their base so aggrieved and radicalized about what Republicans have done that they are then ready to, take up the fight for court expansion and court reform as a kind of tit-for-tat proportional retaliation against what Republicans have done. I don't think Joe Biden should declare his position. That's not the question on the table right now. The fight is about Amy Coney Barrett, not some hypothetical future four justices who might be added to the Supreme Court. So, I could finesse the messaging if I were at the DNC, but I actually think that they're doing a decent job.
I'm going to agree with 85% of what you said, and I don't have really the ability. But the only thing I would say is that they are participating in this hearing signals to the American public that at least it's somewhat normal. It doesn't matter what they say. Show me, don't tell me. They could show the American public that this process has been corrupted And I'm convinced the reason why they're not, and I agree with you, I don't think Biden should say anything about it. It's perfectly fine for him to say, I'm not a fan of it. Okay, great. Good. You're not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it either. I think it should happen later if they seat this justice. But by participating in this, they are dampening the outrage because they are under signaling how outrageous this is. And by dampening the outrage, I think that they are trying to set the table to tamp down that outrage when she is sat so that they don't have to deal with it in January. But we're going to talk more about this next time you come on. Mark Joseph Stern, folks can check you out at Slate. The stuff that you've been writing about this has been great. And like I say, I follow you on Twitter and, most of the stuff is alarming now. So, but I appreciate it anyways.
Thanks. Glad to terrify you. That's my job.
Thanks for coming on. All right, folks, we're going to take a brief, tiny break, and we'll be back in a moment. All right, we're back. We have Senate races around the country that are taking place. I mean, if you go and you look at I head over to one of the polling sites and you look at the breakdown of the Senate races, you're going to see a trend. A lot of these polling places, what they do is they put the difference between the two candidates, and they will do plus, and then the name, and it will be the color. If it's red, if it's a Republican is in the lead, it's red. And if it's a Democrat in the lead, it's in blue. And if you look, just scan across it, you will see that many of those are blue, and they're turning bluer as we get close to the election. Now, they're razor thin margins. We have a lot of voter disenfranchisement, even in Texas right now. The Texas governor is excited at the fact that they only have to put one ballot box in each county. And there are counties in the state of Texas that, people don't take drives like that. Over the course of a year, they don't drive that far in parts of this country. But in Texas, you're expected to return your ballot in person. If you want to do it, you have to drive hours and hours. He's excited about that. So you cannot be sure. However, we're seeing it in places like even in North Carolina. We're seeing it in other places. Folks can check out the race in West Virginia. I haven't seen much polling. But who knows? Here's a race where I think we have a missed opportunity. I don't know if anybody could defeat Mitch McConnell, but Charles Booker, I thought, had the best shot, but voters deemed otherwise. Amy McGrath is running against Mitch McConnell. But here is a moment just to remind you of how, frankly, ghoulish Mitch McConnell is. The Senate is standing in the way right now of any type of COVID relief bill. Trump and Mnuchin want to do it. Pelosi wants to do it. The Senate, the Republicans in the Senate are standing in the way because Mitch McConnell thinks that he's going to lose control of the Senate. He thinks that Joe Biden is probably going to win the presidency. And if he does, he doesn't want to have set up any more relief for the American public because he's going to snap back into that position he took during the Obama administration, which is no help for the American people, just total obstruction. But just look at Mitch McConnell's response when Amy McGrath starts talking about providing no relief during COVID.
The House passed a bill in May, and the Senate went on vacation. I mean, you just don't do that. You negotiate. Senator, it is a national crisis. Yeah. You knew that the coronavirus wasn't going to end at the end of July. We knew this. I mean, I just think you've got to. And here's the thing: if you want to call yourself a leader,
Bill,
if you want to call yourself a leader, you got to get things done. And those of us that served in the Marines, we don't just point fingers at the other side. We get the job done.
I mean, I just try and imagine that. First of all, it's incredibly ghoulish to see Mitch McConnell laugh and chuckle at the idea that he didn't. And there's been actually multiple bills. The HEROES Act and sort of like the Slim HEROES Act passed by the House. Senate is completely obstructing these bills. And the others don't want to provide the help to the American public. If Trump wins, maybe they'll get to it then. But if it's going to be Biden, they don't want to provide that help. I can't help but think in my head how Charles Booker would have approached that. But it is what it is. And it's not just about, a leader getting stuff done. It is, there are American people, it doesn't even matter that they're American. But we can only do stuff for the American people in this instance when it comes to COVID relief. There are people, millions upon millions of people suffering, and they're not doing anything about it. We will talk more about this and cover more of the Amy Coney Barrett hearings tomorrow on the program. If you are just joining us for the hour, we will say adieu. For those of you who are sticking around, I wonder if there's anybody else who finishes their show in French. Sadly, it's the only thing. It's the only French word I know. That's French, right? Adieu.
Yes, that's French.
If you're sticking around for the fun half, folks, glad to have you. You can do that by becoming a member of the Majority Report. Go to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you're supporting the first half of the show, and you're getting extra content every day. And frankly, you're also some level, supporting the endeavor like the AM Quickie, which we do every morning, about 6-7 minutes. Headline news from a decidedly left-leaning perspective. And you can sign up for that at amquickie.com, or you can find it on your podcast servers, wherever it is. Also, do we have Nomi? Is she here? No? Hello?
Here she is.
Here she is. She's going to tell you about what's happening on the Nomiki show in just a moment. I want to remind you also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Also, I should also say this. So Tim Pool, right, was on Twitter the other day talking about how, lefties won't come on a show. And I said, well, I'll come on your show. And it turns out to be on a show, you need to fly to Washington, D.C., and then go into a studio, presumably, one that is at least airtight, or at least sound tight, or whatever it is, and sit down with at least 3 folks in there, as far as I can tell, who are not wearing masks. I don't know how careful these guys have been in terms of COVID. I have a responsibility to myself, I guess, and to also my kids and my ex-wife, who I exposed via my kids, and the little tiny pod play group that my son is in. And so it is tough for me to do that. In addition, it's tough, you do a 5-day-a-week show. When are you going to fly down to DC and get back in time? So for the time being, I will not be doing that. I'm debating as to whether or not, I got to try and figure out if there's a way to do it. But here he is. I recently did a thread where I said it was hard to book leftists on my podcast. I was immediately bombarded with leftists calling me out as a liar and throwing names at me. A few people publicly said they'd go on my show in response, and then privately messaged me saying they wouldn't. I did DM Tim and said I would do, and then he said, you got to come here. He claims they've never done remote interviews for In Real Life, IRL. That's the name of the show. I guess for a while they had a format where they wouldn't do interviews. It's super easy to set up doing remote interviews, obviously. But I guess the format's not going to change even for a pandemic. But here's the point. If you say that you must fly halfway across the country, a third of the way across the country, a quarter of the way across the country in the middle of a pandemic, you're going to limit who you're going to get as guests. You're going to get professional agitators. You're going to get younger people. You're going to get single people. And you're going to get people who are not as concerned about COVID because they don't believe that it's real. And that's what you're going to get. So, and this is part of the thing that I have an issue with Tim, is that it's one thing to say, hey, it's funny, leftists seem to be more concerned about COVID, and so they don't come on my show in this instance. Or, it seems like leftists aren't as hungry to, be exposed to, and it is a massive audience he has. Massive. And that's curious to me. But to make it sound like leftists won't come on the show as if like they're afraid to go on with him, as opposed to like, I cannot make like for instance, I could say, listen, I have offered $10,000 to any conservative who will come on this show. And they're not coming on the show. And then they DM me and like, I'll come on the show. And I'm like, yes. Okay. Here's the deal. You got to pay me $20,000. And then after you jog here, because I like all of my people to get here with blisters on their feet. That's just why we call it Cedar's going to blister you. And then I give you the $10,000 right after I get the $20,000 check and it clears. You can see, I mean, it's obviously it's a little bit of an extreme example, but you can see what we're talking about here, right? Like it is disingenuous to do that. That, as far as I can tell, is the formula. Now, with that said, it's true. He's making enormous amounts of money. Like, I think that he probably generates more revenue on his show, if it is the case that he had 110 million views last month. He's probably generating more revenue annually than most hosts of cable television get as a salary. In fact, I would probably say like there's few who make more money than that. So he has a massive audience. It is true. And I don't think that there's an audience there that is available to me, but I do think there's an audience there that is available, at least a portion of that, to see that perhaps maybe the information that they're getting there is a little bit less obvious than they think it is. Let's put it that way. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll have that opportunity. In the meantime, however, joining me is the host of the Nomiki show.
Okay.
Miki show? Nomiki show.
Oh, come on.
What?
This is like a shtick. Yes, hi. It's Nomiki.
Hi, Nomiki. How are you?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
Nomiki.
You got it. There you go.
Well, I just saw it because it came up on on your Zoom thing. Who's going to be on today?
Today we have Harvey K. It's been a while, so
awesome.
I'm excited to have him on. And then we have Nando Vila and Napoleon DeLegend for our panel afterwards. So we're going to have a real good conversation about, where the left is right now, what kind of fights are happening, why they're happening. I'm sure a lot of you guys are watching yesterday. And, it's just an important moment to stay focused. So
yes, you and I are going to talk more about that in a moment.
YouTube.com/The Nomiki Show right after the show.
3 p.m.
3 p.m.
And also, folks, check out The Antifada. You can find it at patreon.com/The Antifada. Also today, where the heck is that? Oh, I can't find that. Also today, tonight is Tuesday. So, Matt, what's happening on TMBS?
Tonight, Alicia Brooks is talking to Kristen Goddessy on why you have better sex under socialism. So that's that argument for you, Sam. So you want to look forward to that one. So patreon.com/TMBS and the Michael Brooks Show on YouTube tonight.
Fantastic. I was just told by my sister that adieu is like saying goodbye forever. So I should probably be saying au revoir at the end.
Tout à l'heure. How about that? Tout à l'heure.
Doesn't it literally mean to like to God or something like that? Adieu.
Yeah,
Adieu.
maybe it means like I'm heading home. I mean, look, it's in this era, it is probably not bad to. I just got an IM. Tim Pool's economics researcher. Sam Cedars paying $10K to any conservative willing to appear on MR. Clipped and noted. So there you go. All right.
Read the fine print.
A quick break. We will say au revoir until we see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. It's the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. I want to just do this clip quickly, Nomi, because there's this concept going around that I mentioned this. There's 5,000 scientists supposedly who have signed this thing saying that we shouldn't, that the lockdown shouldn't be good. If we maintain some basic guidelines, and we have proven as a society that we're not capable of providing basic or maintaining basic guidelines. We're just simply not. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but I mean, there's no point in going through it. I mean, it's just simply the case. It's also conceivable that human beings just don't have, every epidemiologist I spoke to at the beginning of this said, 6 months peak to peak. Why? Don't know. And it's just conceivable that human beings, have a short-term memory deficit when it comes to sort of things they should be afraid of or concerned about or worry about, and 6 months is maybe the cycle that it takes to sort of like be rigorous about avoiding catching an infectious disease, and then feeling like, oh wait, we've figured out because it's summer or whatever it is, like I can go out and not catch the disease, and then forgetting when you go back inside that you can catch the disease.
Well, I mean, it's also just, it's human nature. Like the numbers were going down, people were loosening. I mean, their guard went down a little bit. Also, the lockdown was so intense in the beginning. I think when the numbers started to get better and we realized some of the rules, you could go outside, you could social distance outside and have a little bit more freedom. Little by little, people started to loosen up, not to mention government doing absolutely nothing.
Right. To promote people, like making it easier for people to adhere to those guidelines, without a doubt. Here is the director of the WHO. This is the World Health Organization.
I've never.
Nobody ever calls it the WHO.
Pete Townsend.
This is the Dr. Roger Daltrey.
The WHO, the World Health Organization. I mean, come on! If you're going to use an acronym, why wouldn't you say that?
Won't get COVID again.
I don't know. I guess I mean, why would you use the initials if you're not going to say it? It just spells out. All right. Well, fine, whatever. I call it the WHO, the World Health Organization. I don't know. I guess
the WHO.
I'm the only person who calls it the WHO.
You are the only person.
All right, that's fine. Anyways, I mean, I get most of my health directives from Led Zeppelin, but the WHO, the director of the World Health Organization, has a message to people who think that herd immunity is a strategy for fighting a pandemic, as opposed to a concept that comes about through vaccination.
Right.
Here it is.
There has been some discussion recently about the concept of reaching so-called herd immunity by letting the virus spread. Herd immunity is a concept used for vaccination, in which a population can be protected from a certain virus if a threshold of vaccination is reached. For example, herd immunity against measles requires about 95% of a population to be vaccinated. The remaining 5% will be protected by the fact that measles will not spread among those who are vaccinated. For polio, the threshold is about 80%. In other words, herd immunity is achieved by protecting people from a virus, not by exposing them to it. Never in the history of public health has herd immunity been used as a strategy for responding to an outbreak, let alone a pandemic. It's scientifically and ethically problematic.
I mean, in the best case scenario, we don't know how infected you have to be to not get reinfected.
Right.
We don't know for sure how many different strains are out there that you could still be vulnerable to after getting one strain of COVID. And I guess, the point here is that, like, you're basically saying we're going to kill an uncertain number of people to get to this point, and we're going to do it more or less on purpose.
Well, I mean, like, the plague is a great case study here. It's not. there was no vaccine. This lasted, I mean, how long did it last? 10 years or so? And it was, there were highs and lows, peaks and valleys, and numbers were much, much, much worse. But I just don't understand, like, is this a real conversation? Are we actually having a conversation about herd immunity, or is this just like a far right-wing thing? Because this isn't in exchange for, instead of developing a vaccine.
No, it's just this idea that like we should go out there and let it roll and, you know, try and sequester people who have the highest chances of dying and assume that we can do that effectively and assume that we're, you know, like the you know, the immiseration of those people would be pretty intense. I mean, it's very difficult, I think, for older folks who have to be that much, you know, more vigilant. And the idea that, like, you know, let's roll the dice and see what happens. Maybe we only need to get to 45% or 50%, you know, of people getting infected, or maybe it's 60%, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 70%. We don't know. And
but they played this out. I mean, was it Norway first? Their first strategy, was it Norway? Their first strategy was herd immunity.
Sweden, no, they don't. They do not refer to it as a herd immunity strategy, but it is there was some notion of like there would be less shutdowns. Now that the ebbs and flows there too, and you know, you got to look at places that have had some measure of success, and it involves you know, largely like a massive effort to wear masks, let's say, when you come in contact with people. And certainly when you go inside, that's the thing.
It's,
you know, that's the thing with the Tim Pool invite. It's like, dude, I'm sorry. The idea, like, I am aware of multiple people who have died of this, you know, who are either like, not necessarily close to me, but, you know, friends of the family, or close friends of my friends. I know of people who have been sick for months with this. And I have responsibilities outside myself. To go into a room, a closed room, with people that you are not absolutely sure have been taking things seriously, and even then it's scary, without masks, is literally the one thing that they say you should absolutely not do in the context of a pandemic. Are the odds high that anyone in that room has COVID? Not necessarily, but that's the thing, you don't know. And so it's ridiculous.
Didn't he just have a Proud Boy in studio? I mean, how serious was he taking it?
I don't know. I watched part of that Proud Boy interview, and it was pretty fascinating, because what Tim does is he spends the whole time talking about the details of certain events that take place there. And he seems to really read in to those. And that's where he holds the guy to account.
You mean take place there, like when they're having interactions in the streets?
Like when they're, you know, when Gavin was doing his comedy show, where he was stabbing the mock stabbing the socialist or whatever it is. And just sort of all the details of, like, the camera took a picture of this and the cops did this and that. And then when the guy says stuff like, you know, we're just American chauvinists, he's like, okay, and moves on, like, wait, let's tease that out. We're Western chauvinists. No examination of what does that mean for reals. And it's sort of interesting. So if you are watching, and there was something like, 50,000 people on his live stream.
Jesus Christ.
These are enormous numbers. If you are watching that and you're not terribly sophisticated, and I would imagine that his audience is particularly young, relatively speaking, young men is what I would imagine his demo is. I may be wrong about that, but I'd be surprised if I was. And Tim appears to be not lobbing softballs because he's saying like, but wait a second. Didn't Jimmy Stevenson drive down, Maple Road on that? Well, you did. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Maybe you guys shouldn't have been so close and trying to get into a fight. But it's all about like Antifa and Proud Boys. There's no ideology there. There's no ideas. There's no agendas. It's really just about like two different, two different, gangs, or just two different people at your high school. Like, listen, I'm not aligned with Carrie's friend group, and I'm not aligned with Wendy's friend group. I just know that I'm watching, and Carrie told a lie about Andrea, and Andrea meanwhile was dating Kevin, who's and it's like it's all, that's why it's so effective, because
it appeals to your that us versus them. It appeals to a very male tendency, and I think men in particular.
It appeals to the drama that you go through in high school.
But also it's not even just that. There is a male component of being in a fight and the emotional side of this. Like there is a very, it's almost like in the most basic raw elements of like human nature. When you watch these things, it's like when I listen to Joe Rogan, I'm like, this does not appeal to me. It just does not appeal to me. And then when I talk to friends that do, it's just like this bro thing that is very like how men are cultured, like hanging out with each other, talking shit, fighting around with. It's just a fight. It's just a natural fight. Like we're just having different opinions on air, and we're just fighting it out. That I don't know. That's very. I'm allergic to that, and I think a lot of women are cultured to be allergic to it, and that's why the audience reflects that.
I think
I don't
that's
know.
true.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, no, I know. I think that's absolutely true. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that this is the way that Tim projects himself as being some type of arbiter. Like he's like, no journalist will talk to you. He's talking to the head of the Proud Boys. And he's like, he opens up with this question, like, are you a white supremacist? And the guy who is of Cuban descent, I think he said maybe it was African and some indigenous Cuban descent. I don't know. But the guy's like, no, as you can see, I'm not even white. And there is no exploration of like, what's going on here? You guys, it started out as a joke. And then what are you doing? Like exactly, like, what is it that you're doing? And there is no, he appears to be, I'm going to say interrogating, but he appears to be, sort of like inquisitive, but unbiased and this and that on some level, because all he's talking about is the mechanics of these guys getting into it at any point. Yeah. He is not talking about like, why do you exist? Like, why are you in my studio? What is it that you're presenting? What is like, if we were to just sort of say like, this is a battle between two different groups, is it completely just like you don't like each other? He makes it as if it's about high school, where it's like Carrie's friend group and, Brian's friend group. It's not ideological. It's just like, they're just two different cliques. And which clique is better? Which clique is not? And that's it. There's no ideology. There's nothing. There's no agendas. It's just like two different friend cliques. And
beyond that, what do they stand to gain? That's my question. Exactly. Same thing on the left, by the way. We'll get to that later. What do you gain out of this position? If you're going to stand here on a show in front of 50,000 people, what are you making a case for?
Yes.
What are you arguing over?
And it really ultimately is just like, we're in the right.
Yeah.
And it's like, as opposed to the we're in the wrong, not ideological. And it's like, that's where it is. That's where he takes it. That's the terrain he takes it on. That this is just like two different groups of kids at school who are just like, which one is the, it's almost like, what the hell was the name of that one with the wax on, wax off, the Karate Kid. It's just like, which dojo has the good kids and which dojo has the bad kids? And that's it. It's not like this is an ideological battle and none of that gets in. It's sort of fascinating. However, when Tim Pool talks about Democrats and Joe Biden, you're not going to believe that how nefarious Joe Biden's plan for America is, Nomi. Check this out.
If Joe Biden wins, they'll take over all our cultural institutions. They'll put psychotic and insane definitions in our dictionary, and they will take over, and regular Americans will say, please, for the love of God, just leave me alone. And they never will. They'll never stop coming. They will take your job away. They will come for your parents. You will do something wrong. They'll fire your mom. They'll come to your house with fireworks and guns, and Americans will still just say, what? Please, just leave me alone. And that's how it is. Even in the Revolutionary War, most people, the largest majority of people, were non-initiated. There was a small faction saying no revolution. There was a larger faction saying revolution. And the bulk said, please just leave me alone. So long as we've been dealing with the psychotic cancel culture. Well, where are you to stand up at your job and tell your boss to shut up when he says, I'm going to put out this bland message that panders to these woke lunatics? Where are you to say, if you do that, I quit? They say, fine, quit. Okay, I will. And I'll go start my own company. Nowhere to be found. You're completely right. But at least I quit my job. When I worked for Disney and they said, lie to the public, I said, fuck you.
Oh.
And I told them, cut my contract off. And they said, no. Welcome to the golden handcuffs, Tim. You got one more year under lock and key. And then I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do what you want. And then finally it came to August and I said, bye-bye. I'm going to go do my own thing. And guess what? It worked. So where the fuck is everybody?
Oh my God.
So I did 30 videos on Jussie Smollett.
Right. Well, he was, now this is when he says Disney, Brendan, he's talking about Fusion, right?
Yeah, he's talking about Fusion. And when I joined, which was after Tim, it was majority owned by Univision at that time. It started as a joint venture between Univision and Disney. And then Disney saw that it was a mess. So they dropped out and Univision bought out Disney's share. So he wasn't really working for Disney by the end of his contract, but it sounds cool.
Right. And it also, let's be clear, the only thing that he wouldn't have been able to do would probably be to go and work for a rival company at that point if he was under contract with them. Right. Yeah, I've been in those instances. He just didn't want to walk away from the hundreds of thousands of dollars they were paying him annually. And he was, those golden handcuffs. But listen, the idea that Joe Biden is going to get in and there's going to be a cultural revolution. Yes, it is the case. I think that a lot of people don't want to get involved in politics. I don't know what his point is about the American Revolution. Is he saying that we should still be subjects to the British monarchy?
What was that?
Well, I think it's his argument is that, and this is the conservative argument, right? This is the reactionary argument. We do not want the structures of our society, the structure of power in society to change at all. And we're going to make it hip anew to maintain old power structures. And we do not want any complaints about these power structures. We do not want any changes to these power structures. There is no doubt in my mind that a significant portion of the country, we don't know what it is, maybe it's 40%, maybe it's 45%, maybe it's a little bit more. Maybe it's 55%, I don't know. They don't turn out to vote, maybe. But that want to keep society static because they're happy with the way that it is. And
but they think they have no power and they feel disconnected from the electoral system. I mean, I just don't buy this argument. I think he's so wishy-washy. It's like, for such a capitalist, he really has a thing for the man. And it's almost like that's their strategies. Like, they want to ease into this disaffected, angry worker, pull him away from the left, and somehow convolute the argument towards goal. I don't even know what he was saying in the end, but it was like he made a point, then he stopped and he went crazy, started talking about the Revolutionary War and golden handcuffs and, fireworks coming to your house. What? But he eases them in with this anger towards.
There's an authority and anti-establishmentarian perspective that is, I share myself. I don't, I don't like having a boss. We're doing a syndication deal with Peacock right now, and they're not my boss. They, the only change, they said if you want to do this, you need to make the show 55 minutes that you present to us. And so I do a couple of, small breaks, but that's it. And even that, believe me, it's not, I have problems with, but there's no control there. I understand being allergic to authority. I understand being allergic to the establishment, but when it is untethered from any type of agenda, it's useless. And when that agenda is actually to maintain the status quo, right? Like, he doesn't have a problem with Disney controlling a huge portion of our media. He doesn't have a problem with massive corporate power. He has a problem with Disney being disingenuously woke
and telling him what to do.
Well, but
it's okay. He can just start his own company and compete with Disney. It's just so easy.
Well, and he did. And like I say, I am sympathetic to the idea of being anti-authoritarian. Like, I don't like the idea of having a boss and that boss saying to me, you're going to do it this way or you're not going to get paid. And that's why I don't have a boss. That's why I don't have a boss. And particularly, we're all fortunate in this space that we can do that. And sometimes it takes a long time for it to go. Sometimes you got to get lucky. It's not available to everybody, without a doubt. But to critique Disney exclusively because of their saccharine wokeness, which I think, sure, yes, saccharine wokeness, I don't particularly care for. But what you're doing is you're hiding the ball. You're basically obfuscating what the real problem with a corporation like that is. It's just that they have undue influence within our society and over workers, period.
Right.
And every corporation like them, and they set their agenda on their various platforms to promote that. It's not that they're the saccharine wokeness. That's just one of the veneers that they use to get through the day.
Yeah, it's annoying because it obscures, not because of itself.
Exactly. It is just like, and people make this mistake. It obscures the source of power. It is like what Alex Jones does, not in format. And people get confused about this. It hides the ball.
It's the same thing Trump does when he's like, the Mexicans are taking your jobs. No, it's the system. But what I love is how he then he flips it on Biden, as if under Biden, this corporate structure, which, I'm not saying that it would change for the better. Maybe it will. I am hoping so. But he plants the blame back towards the Democrats. And that is extraordinarily disingenuous Disney's even like conservative. They have conservative roots. There's a whole other set of issues there with Disney specifically.
Yeah, anti-communist to Walt Disney, basically.
And also, let's if you want to sort of, dissect what he's saying about Biden, right? Because Biden has given no indication, Biden's entire campaign has been drawn upon the premise that, I'm the guy who's not going to change much. If you're worried about wokeness, if wokeness is why you were voting for a Democrat, Joe Biden would be the last guy you would have voted for, right? Because everybody's going to be corn pop, whatever it is that he was saying. What he's, and the idea is Joe Biden, Obama really had to sit on him during the 8 years that they were in office.
Gay marriage, one slip
Joe's
up.
Gonna try it, change it. Come on, man. Let me come on, free love, whatever it is that he thinks he's going to do. Joe Biden's the last guy who you would imagine is going to promote this agenda. But largely, look, there's two clips I want to play. And then this will lead into another conversation I think you want to have too. Here is, should we play this? Oh, this is Tim Pool with That Proud Boy Guy. Let's play this first, and then we will get to the whole PC culture thing. Here is Tim Pool platforming the Proud Boys guys to let them to explain that they're not violent and they didn't harass Vic Berger.
If you show me exactly right there where he's calling for violence and it's in context, then yeah, fine. But I've never seen it. I've never seen that he's like directly. Vic Berger makes these videos that make him seem like this demon. Right?
Yeah, so I understand a lot of those were pulled out of context. I've actually gone through a list of where the clips came from.
Oh, here, perfect example. We're like, all right, you know what we're gonna do after getting doxxed so much? We're gonna find their addresses, and we're gonna yeah, let's do it. And we go like that, and we pull up all the information, all their addresses, and we sit there together, and we're like, all right, what are we gonna do with this? And we're like, wait, what are we gonna do with that?
You can't do anything.
Like, are we gonna we're gonna show up at the house? Like,
that happened though, didn't it?
Do we like knock? Yeah, one of our guys got pissed off at
Vic Berger.
At Vic Berger and knocked in his house and asked him to like not like do that anymore.
Jesus Christ.
You know, it was like, hey, Vic, can you stop doing this, please? And Vic like blew his lid, but like. There's nothing that we can do. You'll never find us go to a house and like
He definitely
break a window.
Should not have gone to Vic Berger's house.
He shouldn't have gone to Vic Berger's house. But regardless, the thing is, yes, but like if you're knocking on somebody's door, it's very old school to do that. But he is an older gentleman. But you knock on somebody's door and you ask for sugar. You're like, hey, can you turn the music down? And that's basically what the conversation was.
Oh my God. Or he'd be back.
I mean, that's a prime example there, right? Like you shouldn't have gone. Well, no, this is not like you're lying about it. You sent somebody down there to intimidate somebody who's a critic of yours online. Like, and what's going on here? And Tim doesn't, it's just like you shouldn't have done it. See, I was harsh on them. I said you shouldn't have done it. Well, it was a mistake. Won't do it again.
It was kind of old school, though.
It was old school. Right.
Old school
It is
meaning,
old school.
what do you mean? Like going to somebody's house?
Well, like people knock on your door and like, can I have some sugar? People just usually text now. But this was like one of those things where they show up at your door and say, we know where you live. We know where your kids are. In fact, I've driven down here 3 hours from Massachusetts to make it clear we know where you live and where your kids are.
Everybody should watch and share Vic Berger's videos on the Proud Boys.
Absolutely.
Then, yeah, Gavin has called for violence. Of course he has.
Has
He's
Vic
glorified.
Berger gotten a restraining order against him?
What's that?
Has he gotten a restraining order
I
against
don't
them?
know. I don't know what happened with that. That's a good question.
Sounds like.
But there it is. I mean, this stuff, that's how stuff gets whitewashed, folks.
Mafia intimidation. You want to talk about old school? That's literally what that is.
Yes.
You know where you live.
We
Here's
know
a
where
fish
you live.
head. At least they were more.
Nice family you got here.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful daughter.
All right, so let's just talk about this notion of political correctness. I just this was just out. This is, I guess, an interview from July, and I hadn't seen this, but I love it because this has been, and I guess Chomsky's been making this argument since even the mid '90s when it was all about we don't like political correctness, PC culture is bad, and this is stuff I've been saying, and I probably got it from Noam Chomsky maybe at one point, if not directly by osmosis, but he says it in a far more succinct way than I do. This is an interview with Chomsky from the July on, do we know what the name of the show is? Well, I think it's on the thing.
Do you regard political correctness, which is kind of a linguistic phenomenon, as a positive development in human existence, especially given what you said about the wrong assertion by Steven Pinker?
Well, let's take you and me. I suppose somebody put up a big advertisement, big bulletin board in Times Square, New York, saying, "Send the kikes to crematoria." I wouldn't like it. Would you like it?
Well, but Mel Gibson told Winona Ryder apparently, so you're an oven dodger. Now, my point is that
you're not answering my question. Would you like it?
To be honest, I prefer to have that being said, kike or oven dodger, than that not being
So
said.
we should have big billboards in Times Square, New York, saying "kikes to the crematoria." Should we also have a statue of Hitler in the Berlin main square in Berlin? Well, political correctness says no, you shouldn't do that. And I agree with that, and I think you agree. Okay, this whole story began when some other ox started getting gored. Okay, as long as it was just things directed against the left, everything was fine. Now it's extending to some of the privileged people.
That's right.
So I have to get upset about it. Does it go too far? Sometimes, yes. But there's something very serious behind it. Take, say, Afro-Americans. They have suffered 400 years of vicious, hideous repression, unremitting, leaving a grim legacy. They don't like it when somebody calls them nigger or says, boy, come over here. Just like you and I don't like it if someone says, kikes go to crematoria. Now we call that political correctness because it's going after some of those lowly people.
I mean, that is ultimately what it is, right? It's someone else's ox is getting gored instead of the less powerful. Well, I mean, when we talk about political correctness, all we're saying is that, hey, the power dynamic has shifted a little bit, and things, the things that were inappropriate to say have expanded to include not attacking or demeaning or threatening certain segments of our society. That's all that's changed. There has always been things that you're not allowed to say in our society. It's just now that those things are expanded a little bit in terms of what is inappropriate to say. And it is expanding in a way that it has basically said, hey, the decorum that we've had here that didn't include, a prohibition against saying certain things to certain people. Well, now it does include that prohibition. We've just expanded.
Part of the reason is because that group of people now has the right or privilege or space to determine what is to be said about them, the terms that are acceptable. Whereas the power dynamic before was those who were in power were determining how someone was to be distinguished, labeled, etc.
Absolutely. And those in power had their own set of things that you can't say.
Of course.
Right? You can't, like things that are inappropriate. And it's just now that has expanded and it's outside their control. It's all of a sudden PC or it's wokeness or whatever. And like the professor says, does it go too far on occasion? Yes. Like every other human dynamic.
Yes.
Like every other human dynamic. Do I wear does my son wear his mask too diligently? Yes, he does. He does. But I'm like, on balance, it's probably better he does that than less diligently. And is it going to have some negative impact on him that he wears a little too much? Yes, but less negative impact that he wears it too little. And I just use that as an example because that is basically it. It is, there is no precision in cultural change or emancipation for people or a change in the power dynamics in society. There's no perfect landing for these things. But on balance, it is simply about basic fairness and really taking into consideration that there are other human beings who exist in this sphere. And one set does not get to write the rules for everybody anymore.
Now, with that being said, this is a completely different argument than that on the left about the weaponization of PC culture, cancel culture, whatever it is, to divide folks, not being used like in the most for instance, like when Bernie's being called a racist by the neoliberals, you know, when it's used as a weapon against the other, that's a completely different conversation, because I know people on the internet like to put these things together.
Conflate that notion of people are like, I'm not sure I follow
I mean, like the PC culture is used on the left to divide us through identity, through certain. I mean, there were. Sorry, my Siri just went off in the middle of this for some reason. Very strange. I've never been asked by Siri to do anything, and now I'm being asked by Siri. How do I stop this? That was really. Can you hear that?
No.
Going off? Oh, it's just a bunch of buzzing from Siri. No, I'm saying, like, okay, so when Bernie Sanders was running for president and the Hillary Clinton campaign or the Biden campaign or whoever it was labeling him as a racist, that he didn't have, you know, people of color supporting him, nitpicking certain things he said and using it as a weapon to divide and conquer. I mean, that is a form of PC culture, right?
No, I don't perceive that as PC culture. I see that as just simply a disingenuous attempt to create a wedge issue. I mean,
but I don't think that they think that. There were people who truly felt that Bernie was being critical or not respecting them, and they took one little snip and used it. And I do think that because of the factions they were in, they truly felt that way. That's
possible. But I think on some level that is a function of sort of saying like that is I think a cynical and disingenuous attempt to heighten a different perspective on how change happens, as opposed to and weaponizing that, as opposed to the idea of woke culture being something that is problematic in the context of of colleges or in our society writ large. Yes, are there excesses? But again, it's like when you look at our society now and you rank, I mean, there's also a great clip that Chomsky has, and I think it is from a production of Manufacturing Consent. The way that consent and the way that corporations limit and define, and the way that news presents stories that limit the debate and set broad parameters that basically set you on a track so that only certain things can be discussed in certain contexts. It is in how you decide what you're going to attack and rate as the society's problem where this happens, right? Like, yes, I guess if you're on your college campus and there are people who are taking things a bit too far, then that becomes a prominent issue for you. But in terms of society, it's just simply not. It's simply not. Not even close. Not even close.
For instance, the trans bathrooms became an issue when the right wing refused to concede whatever language because it was like a loss for them in the cultural community, rather than like they're thinking it was some sort of left wing push for PC culture or whatever it is. That became a wedge issue for them.
Right. Well, I mean, for them, it became an assault on essentially the traditional, I would say, religious perspective on how the genders should comport themselves. And that gets into dad's the head of the household, mom's, the neck that holds up the head.
Right.
Very important, but not the head. And that is the dynamic, I think, that they wanted to issue. And it was the idea that folks who have in the past been nothing but, a joke or a object of discrimination or violence, and continue to be objects of violence in our society or subjected to violence, the idea that they would be able to go to the bathroom in a way that they feel comfortable with is somehow, a wokeness, as opposed to no, what it is, well, I mean, I guess on some level it is a wokeness insofar as it's a recognition that their humanity counts as much as your humanity.
Exactly. And the terms that they choose to be associated with, they have the right to determine how they are determined, essentially.
Yeah.
Classified in government. It's not up to the Christian male, in Indiana who's a Mike Pence listener.
All right, let's turn a little bit to something I know you've been on the beat on Twitter, and
on the beat.
I don't know.
It's hard to avoid this beat.
What?
It's hard to avoid this
it's
beat.
annoying, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think it's actually like more of, to be honest with you, like a Twitter phenomena than it is, I think, one that is going to bear out at the polls. But who knows? And this is the area in which we live, and podcast technology has not reached. I think YouTube does in many respects, but podcasts have not reached, I think, sort of like the way that, let's say, radio does. And even YouTube's, to some extent, has not attained the reach that radio does. There's a couple of pieces being written about, like, the right-wing talk radio is still completely underestimated in terms of how much it has driven us to this area and driven us to this era and drives this era in many respects on the right. But let's talk about Bree's podcast and what is it called again? I'm sorry. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Bad Faith.
Bad Faith. It's Bree and Virgil Texas's show. And so you set this up because I haven't seen this clip yet.
So they, it's a newer show, and obviously they're friends of ours and allies and comrades in many different ways. And they interviewed Noam Chomsky and gave him a tough time about this vote blue no matter who, whatever you want to, however you want to describe it, essentially voting for Biden in this election. It's not like Chomsky hasn't been challenged on this ad nauseum in the last 6 months, but I think what sticks out is just the timing of it, that we are 21 days away from the election and we're having conversations over how it really could come down to, for all we know, based on 2016, could come down to certain districts across the country, and it could be very tight. And so the pushback, while it got
let's
a lot
play
of
the clip.
Yeah,
I think we have like a 35-second clip of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's see it.
What are the long-term consequences of everybody on the broad left, Democrats, liberals, everyone, saying that under any circumstances, we will vote for a Democratic candidate as long as they are incrementally better than the Republican candidate? Does that way of thinking contribute to the rightward shift of the Democratic Party over years? And what mechanism will ever stop that shift if we're not willing to ever, under any circumstances, leverage our votes?
What you're saying, if you think it through, is we should help Trump win because maybe in the long run, that'll affect the Democratic Party. That's a terrible choice. Helping Trump win, as you're proposing, would mean 4 more years of destruction of the environment, getting possibly to tipping points, which would be irreversible, certainly making any effort to deal with it very difficult. It would mean stacking the judiciary with young, ultra-right lawyers, top to bottom, so that nothing would be possibly done for a generation. And I can go on and on. I don't think that's a wise choice, just on the hope that maybe sometime in the long term, the Democratic Party will pay attention to the fact that you're part of the 50% of non-voters.
I take the multi-generational threat very seriously. As a Black American whose family members have been living as a third tier in American society. My mother was born into an America that didn't recognize her basic human rights. In 1960, she's a relatively young woman. And so what concerns me is the way in which the vote blue no matter who mindset basically privileges more recent concerns that are equally grave as more long-standing concerns that are built in the status quo and says we have to vote for X candidate to prevent X ill from happening. At the same time, those who have suffered under the status quo never seem to get an opportunity to have their issues heard.
I mean, do you want to start with this?
Well, I have some, I mean, there's a response to the long-term versus short-term. There's nothing more long-term and short-term than the climate debate. And on that, I'm so glad that Professor Chomsky started with that issue, because that to me is something that I don't care if Joe Biden is a neoliberal who says he's for fracking. He has a climate plan in which was written by the Sunrise Group and a coalition of climate activists. But that's a completely, I think my big question is, what do we gain from this argument right now? What do we gain by withholding our votes? If someone can actually come up with an answer, and I've posed this question over and over, what do you materially gain? I'm asking you Marxists who believe you're Marxists, what do you materially gain from supporting or not supporting anyone and staying out?
This has exactly been my argument for years.
I don't think that's a Marxist analysis. No.
I mean, yeah, present.
Why is it not a Marxist analysis? I mean,
because it's purely ideological. It's like everyone. It's often based on this pendulum theory of elections that they swing back and forth if we just send the message to the right people, including voters in the party. Like it's clearly not how it works, and that's not how any Marxist, I think, properly understanding any of that body of work would think it should work.
You mean, I'm sorry, just to clarify, you mean that by not voting,
Bree's argument is not.
Got it. I thought you meant my argument was not Marxist.
Right. And this is the problem, is that it is the complaint that she is arguing is accurate. The opportunity that she's saying, like, when do our issues get heard? Well, I mean, the primary for one, and unfortunately, not enough work was done or has been done up to the point that the primary takes place to build enough of a mass to actually elect Joe Biden. Now, I know the DNC exists, and, without even litigating, I can stipulate that they have an undue ability to influence elections. Okay. They have an undue ability to influence elections. What are you going to do to defeat that? How does you not voting get to that point? There is it's black box, magic black box. Do you want an example of that not happening? Of the theory that if I withhold my vote, then we get better outcomes? Here's an example, 2016.
Well, they're going to counter and say, and it's right, two things can be right at the same time. So that was Hillary Clinton's fault. She did not campaign to working people, and as a result, working people making under $50,000 did not turn out and vote. They didn't invest in key states. So that's their argument, and that's the argument they're making now. Well, Joe Biden needs to earn my vote.
Well, wait a second. Even if I stipulate that Hillary Clinton screwed up, I mean, I think there's a myriad of reasons, but let me stipulate that. Where's the evidence that her losing in that way had the outcome that it's supposedly going to bring, which is, where is the candidate that is better than Hillary Clinton now? Where's the upgrade? Because she lost. I mean, first of all, this is not what they were saying beforehand was, I'm going to withhold my vote. And if she loses, we're going to get a better candidate. That was the argument. That was the theory.
Or it would teach them a lesson. Bernie Sanders was that. That was the lesson.
They don't learn.
That was it.
People don't learn. I can also make the argument that people don't learn because it was attempted in 2016 and it failed. If the agenda was to get a better candidate this time around, I don't think Joe Biden's a better candidate than Hillary Clinton. I think on many things, like just on sheer policy, probably worse than she is. I mean, maybe his climate change, his climate proposal is better, but that was 4 years ago. There's 4 years. We have 4 years less to deal with that. But his Medicare proposal is worse. His healthcare proposals are worse.
Barely mentions charter schools, and don't forget that was a charter school administration, and Hillary Clinton was not.
Hillary Clinton was not. I mean, we can argue as to whether which one is to the right or left, but it's clearly there's not a huge upgrade here.
Right.
And so there is no theory of change there. And to the extent that you could articulate one, it is only things have to get so bad. There has to be so much immiseration that we must usher in till we get real change. So that's what we need to do. And otherwise it's just sort of like a personal morality question of the
thing that really frustrates me about this is, so there's this argument right now about, well, Trump's not a fascist. I don't know if you've seen this one. So you make these arguments and the response is, because we're fighting fascism. We didn't know how bad Trump was going to be. We had an idea. Anybody who studied Trump or interviewed Wayne Barrett, read any of his books, had a sense of who he was. But for the most part, when folks said, I'm voting green, they didn't understand what that whole game was. When folks said, well, if Trump wins, well, at least like the Clinton dynasty will be over and neoliberalism will be dead. That didn't happen. No. And Trump isn't that bad. Clearly didn't happen. Now we know what happens. So why are we still making this argument? And the only thing it comes down to me is you don't necessarily understand how primaries work. And I don't know if everybody understands that there were some strategies that just may not have been the best strategies for the Bernie campaign, and he was out-strategized. And yes, he was running against MSNBC. Yes, he was running against the DNC. But they knew that because they went through it in 2016.
It's not like who could have imagined that they would have done that, right? I mean, none of this is like saying I would have won the marathon, but there was a hill there. Well, there was a hill there when you started the race.
So I think some of it's personal. I think some of it is actually just personal, and that's dangerous. I keep saying in the face of fascism, and I can't believe how many leftists are saying Trump's not a fascist or that Biden is too.
Listen, Trump doesn't need to be a fascist. I mean, I don't, people, the definition of fascism is you can get 5 different definitions from 5 different people that you talk to, but there is no doubt that Trump is worse for the least politically represented in this country. I mean, that is the fact. And if only because it's also like, it is Mitch McConnell you're empowering. I mean, Trump gives you a lot of like sort of the fascistic, if you will, policies. But meanwhile, McConnell is destroying like the average worker, destroying. And again, part of it is like there is just a complete absence of understanding of the role of the courts in our society. Right. And you can say they're bad, but that doesn't make them go away. Right. You can say it's unfair and we should have structural change and we shouldn't have courts, we shouldn't have this, but they exist. They exist today. They're going to exist in 10 years. They're going to exist in 20 years. They're going to exist in 30 years, and they're going to exist in 40 and 50 years. I wouldn't maybe in 51 years, there won't be any. But for the next, 20 to 30 or 40 years, we're definitely going to have courts, and they're going to implicate, every element of our society. And it is not enough to say, I want these things to go away. It is not enough to say, I want the neoliberals to go away, or I'm not going to participate in their game. That's not an expression of change. That doesn't, not only does it not bring material benefit in the short run, even if it's less material benefit than you would want, there's no plan there. There's no 1-year plan. There's no 2-year plan or 5-year plan or 10-year plan. There's just some like, maybe this will happen sometime out there.
I mean, courts have been around for centuries longer than what we understand to be the age of capitalism. So they're probably not going to be
without a doubt. Without a doubt. And, so I don't know.
So I mean, but the other thing, like attached to this is actually the plan for Democrats. So if you think that the Democratic Party is sick of progressives and doesn't want that, this is how you do what they want. This is also how you divide the left. 3 weeks before the election, we're having this conversation rather than how we're going to push the Biden administration on the Green New Deal, which I don't think he's going to be able to avoid. How are we going to push the Biden administration on Medicare for all, which is a huge point of leverage we have right now in the midst of a pandemic. But instead, we are going through 2016 debates over whether or not Biden is nice enough to us This is politics.
I couldn't
Can I
agree
just-
more. Like right now, there was a piece that I saw. Gosh, where the heck is it? There's a piece on the attempts to get Politico had a piece, and
great publication.
It references only. Well, there's a whole different. Yes, that's it. Like, this is what we should be focusing on, right? Is like, there's a fight going on.
Yeah.
That basically is, they call them Warren proteges. Some of them are. There's obviously people out there who plant the story, want to make it, they're politicking. Like, this is the thing. They're doing work that is building political power in the structures that we have at this time. It's not a mutually exclusive project, but it's just like the ship, the train is leaving the station. You can't do this 6 to 8 months from now. You want to get your people in on day one. You want to get them in on day one because the biggest push for an agenda is going to happen in these first 2 years if they take the Senate and they take the House and they take the presidency. These 2 years are going to be defining as to what the Biden administration is going to be. I can tell you right now, it is going to be suboptimal from the perspective of the left. But the question is, how less suboptimal can we make it? How much can we make it address? Like, the difference in having, like, I don't know, Katie Porter in the administration, or people from Sherrod Brown's banking committee working in the administration on issues of banking regulation, aides to Maxine Waters, getting in to help develop climate change policy. Whomever it is, the point is that, like, this is where we should be engaged. But basically saying, like, hey, we're not involved in this election is basically like saying, like, oh, okay. Well, in that case, guess what? You don't have a seat at the table.
Exactly.
Bye.
That's right.
See you later.
And there's real leverage. I mean, this was a mistake in 2006. Granted, you were dealing with the Clintons, which that also I think we should make very clear. Dealing with the Clintons, who did not give you room at the table, did not give you air, spit on you in your face, took out opposition files on you, had trolls go out there and attack you. You think, hey, no, this was very real. Targeted you on commissions and other folks. I mean, Jim Zogby, I can't even tell you the amount of hate mail he got because he had a vote in something. That's how they dealt with us. There was no, we had to have a seat at the table and they wouldn't give it to us. They wouldn't even give us the space. This time around, I mean, you've said it before, Sam, like, because Biden doesn't have this 30-year machine, he
doesn't have a machine. He doesn't have a legacy of people who have been barnacles on the good ship Biden for years, because he's just been basically the same guy the entire time. There's room. It's like that. It's the scene around the bed while the king is dying of a consumption, where everybody's like, I'm going to get in there first and I'm going to, get the throne, and you got to get in the game. And otherwise you're just going to sit this one out and watch from the side.
What frustrates me, and I like Brie a lot, but the way these conversations always happen is they use like this disenfranchised voter as a sort of puppet, because they don't want to own the actual strategy themselves. They say, what would you say to this voter who has all these reasons not to like the Democratic Party? And then, like, Chomsky isn't actually talking to them, so he can't actually reason with them. He can't actually work his arguments on them. And like, either have them on bad faith, have those types of voters on bad faith, so they can talk to somebody like Noam Chomsky themselves, if it's their concerns and not yours, or like, I guess, move on from this discussion, because I frankly don't think it's that fruitful. We've been having it for like half a decade since I've been doing this professionally, and I haven't heard a single.
Yes, no, I agree with that totally.
Agreed. But I think that the issue with it is that the timing of it was particularly frustrating.
Yeah,
the timing of it and how it became like a trending item. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see an argument as to how it's helpful. That's the thing. I just don't. And let's see. What else? Well, let me read some IMs. What else do we got here? Did we miss a Dave Rubin clip yesterday? Or did we play that one? Let's get that Dave Rubin clip queued up. Because I saw that, like he got into that Tim Pool thread about no debates and was like, tell me about it. You coward. The unbelievable coward. Jeebus. What can Democrats do if the Supreme Court is lost beyond passing legislation? Can they still pass spending bills and other stuff? Can the Supreme Court undermine voting rights so much that the Democratic voting populace would be reduced to minority versus Republicans at almost a permanent disadvantage? Never imagined a butt cleaning commercial on Emma. Trumpy Bear just said, I'm cornholio. I'm happy with Tushy for my bungalow. Oh, whatever. What can they do if the Supreme Court is lost? Well, in terms of dealing with like that non-delegation and Chevron stuff, it's very, very difficult. The Voting Rights Act, it depends on how they attack it. Like Section 5 can be repaired, I believe, although, if you're not allowed to use past evidence of racism in your election processes, like I don't know what the Democratic Congress can pass that would meet the Supreme Court's standard. And, here's the thing. They're going to pass stuff, and hopefully they'll get rid of the filibuster early on if they take over the Senate, so they can actually pass some legislation. It will take a year or two for some of these things to get to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And if they then lose the Senate in 2022, it becomes a problem. Now, I think there's a very good chance that they can hold the Senate in 2022 because the map looks different. But, it's very hard to say. It's very hard to say. But they've got to hold in 2022 because then it's 6 years again until it comes back into their favor.
Exactly.
Because there's just more. And things like DC statehood, that's incumbent upon, look to who Joe Biden's Office of Legal Counsel, who heads that, because that will tell you whether there will be DC statehood or not. Because there's some question as to, I don't know. I have no idea. But that will give you an indication as to the opportunity for DC statehood. Puerto Rico is a different question. There's going to be, I think, probably there'll be a referendum, and who knows, even in that context, it's really, but
it's complicated.
That
it's
process,
pushed. Yeah.
That process is different than it is for DC, or should be. And I think it will be. I do think that people should have the opportunity to say, like, should we have representation since we're being,
well, they have before. But the problem is the referendum was pushed out by one party, and so the other parties were. This is a very simplistic way of explaining it, but it hasn't been adequately. It's been declared inadequate because it wasn't, even by like voting commissions. So it's complicated because on the island itself, it's still not. The parties are literally distinguished by: are you pro independence? Are you pro statehood? Are you for some in between? That is the fight in Puerto Rico.
There's going to be a lot of things to do, folks. It's going to be very, very, there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. And it's going to be a very different time than it was after Obama was elected. These fights that are taking place right now are so important and will give you an indication of like what the terrain is going to look like. Social praxis. To Sam and Jamie's argument yesterday, Jamie, if Marx is known for critiquing systems of power, shouldn't we use any foothold we can to get inside that system? Sam, how do we prepare for if the system collapses? Well, from my perspective, like, we need to build institutions and we need to present ideas and develop those ideas so that if the opportunity arises, we are there with them. The right has such an advantage in this regard,
right?
Because they have so much money. These think tanks and all this, we all think is BS. But the bottom line is, like, when they get in a position to have power, they don't need to go around like, what do we do? There is a line out the door with people going like, I got an idea. you're going to be president. Here's a list of the 30 top federal candidates to be on the Supreme Court. Here's a list of 500 people for all your federal court vacancies. Like, all of the work is done, and they wait till they get the power, and they take advantage of that opportunity. It's like, it's the old adage of like, when the opportunity knocks, you need to be ready. And that is what, like, it's the extent that I can do that here. There's a reason why I push out, things like, antitrust. Like, the antitrust people are a perfect example of a segment of the left that has been building for this moment for years. They thought they were going to have the opportunity with Clinton. They didn't, because it was obviously foreclosed, but they were ready to go there. And then they just keep building and building and building, because you do not know when your opportunity is going to strike. This came up in terms of the People's Party, the populists, when we were talking yesterday to the guest about the moment where you would get reforms and the banking crash that lasted 3 weeks in 1907, what it was. They didn't get all the reforms they wanted, but because they were there with a political base that had been focusing on these issues, and there was awareness amongst people, and you don't need a lot, right? Like net neutrality, we saw that, now sort of got reversed, but we saw that net neutrality, was there was, people were educated, and then boom, 3 million people come in with comments of the FCC, and that's how it happens. You've got to do that on a bigger scale, and you've got to do that with a set of policies. And there's got to be organizations that are out there to maintain the energy for change in specific issues, so that when there's an opening there, you get Katie Porter into wherever it is that they're going to go, and boom, you're off to the races when it comes to antitrust. You get, I don't know. I mean, you get
Stephanie Kelton. I mean, it probably won't
Kelton,
happen, but
or you get Sherrod Brown acolytes who are going to get into the National Labor Relations Board or into the Labor Department. You're getting or OSHA or whatever it is. You've got Markey's got maybe staffers or somebody who's going to be good for the Green New Deal. Get them in the door. I mean, that is what. Personnel is so important in these things, but they also need to have it needs to be sitting on their desk. Here's the proposal. Right. Boom. We're first to market. And that's it.
And again, going back to the point about the Clintons, like the Clintons have been marinating on her running or being president. So they had those people lined up. There was no room for us to push in, even though we,
Center for American Progress.
Exactly.
Was called the Clinton administration in exile during the aughts.
So if this time around, he doesn't have that line out the door, he will, of course. There's going to be people who are ready to go. But like the moment and his personality, the fact that he's malleable, he can be pushed on. He was pushed on fracking. Ask Josh Fox about Delaware. Who was behind banning? It was Joe Biden who pushed, but it took a push. It was not something that he invented. It wasn't something that he had some sort of idealistic, but that was where he stood at that moment, and he pushed it.
Yep.
Now, this moment, I think this moment is going to be the push for him. It's not so much is that we are ready for this moment, that all these different organizations out there are pushing for those people inside, but you gotta show up.
Yep. Absolutely right. And I think, this is the opportunity. Brian Fallon from Demand Justice, who's been building this organization, who came out of the Obama administration, and basically he was one of the few people who said, like, we messed up, like we were wrong. And is, 2 years ago was out with no corporate lawyers in the judiciary. Will he get, if he's the guy, if he's brought on to be one of the advisors, or if he has if it's someone who's allied with him, we may see a better crop of judges and justices, people who are not coming out of like the corporate world, whose, perception of how the law should work and for whom it should work for might be slightly different. I mean, it's not going to be revolutionary. And, you know, the sad thing is like, we don't have anything equivalent to the Federalist Society. We have the AJC, I think it is, but they, you know, there was not enough support for them during the Obama administration and sort of undermined their whole project. All right, do a couple more.
And the funding
of these.
sources are different too. I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Is like they have unified funding sources. You know, a handful of people. Democracy Alliance was supposed to be that version, you know, over a decade ago. But even then, conflicting. I mean,
well, the good thing is that, you know, we have more direct line to people to fund these things, and it frees them up in a lot of respects. All right, let's do 5 more of these because Nomi's got to get to her show. Rob from Austin, do you think it would be effective for Biden-Harris to frame the court issue as a return to balance if the Dems take the Senate? Yeah.
You mean prior to the election?
I'm not sure.
I think if their goal is to win over Republicans, that's why they're not answering that question.
Right. Well, I think also they don't want to do it. They don't want to get locked into it. Mo, damn, Chomsky broke out them words. Haha. I feel like the left needs a better job on not attacking itself on the woke PC discussion. I think what Nomi is talking about is the hypocritical nature of when people to the right of Bernie attack him for seemingly not being woke enough. Yes, I agree with that. Tucker Carlson's really concerned about the bathroom guys. It's an attack on white straight male position on the hierarchy somehow. Juggernaut, you just described how I'm feeling and why I'm grateful for the majority report. Postcards from the Edge. Brianna's argument is heartfelt and would be legitimate if we had 2 traditional candidates. Trump is an accidental anarchist. Biden with COVID is a default opportunity to force change that a progressive candidate would be headlining. I do feel like it is disingenuous to say blue no matter who. I mean, I think there are circumstances where, well, certainly I've, you know, in my lifetime there, you know, I've felt it. I mean, I personally think that on a presidential level, we are at least multiple cycles from there being a candidate who is going to be relevant in a presidential election. Now, it's possible. I don't know. It's possible that maybe, like, I can imagine a scenario where, I don't know, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, I'm just throwing out a name, right? Like somebody who has the ability to create a movement because maybe they have some unique feature. You know, I don't want a billionaire to do it, but somebody who could get up there and start to like present a credible third party challenge because of a fluke, right? Like Michael Bloomberg in some circumstances could have, but I don't want Michael Bloomberg, right? Like I'm not ruling it out, but the point is get some Congress people, you know, like get some, you know, I don't care what the name of the party is, the Green Party, the whatever party, get some Congress people, get 2 senators. I mean, can you imagine if there were 2 senators of, let's say, I don't know, the WFP, let's say, who, or whatever. I know the WFP, but whatever. Just, you know, random left of Democrats party who managed to win in 2 states, let's say, right? You know, whatever state it is. That's an important block in the Democratic caucus. If you're getting to like around, you know, whatever it is, let's say they drop the filibuster threshold to 55 or something, and you can get 2 people in there who are voting as a block, you can start to sway some power. You know, I mean, it's not huge, but
that's what Bernie did. I mean, as an independent, the frustration a lot of Democrats had was he didn't play ball with them on their rule. He was able to take part how he wanted to in the caucus, but then not run around and fundraise, which he's done since he's run for president, but he didn't have to play that fundraising game they all had to play. And as a result, you know, he was able to create his own distinguished power and use his leverage at certain moments. Now, like you said, imagine 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them.
Yes. You can really do something. I mean, and imagine if all that energy that is spent in the presidential election was focused on even 10 Congress people around the country, right? Like, I mean, what, like at its peak, the Freedom Caucus, you know, they were not transparent about how many people they had because they didn't have that many, right? But it couldn't have been more than 24 tops. And they were able to basically control. Now, part of it was because there was a lot of like Freedom Caucus-y leanings in that entire party and that electorate, and that they're a lot more, sort of like singular. But my point is that we're going to see how the squad plus, right, the growing squad, is going to start to have some heft. And it's quite possible in 2022 they're going to have some real actual power, and that's how you do it, right? I mean, that's how you build these things.
I mean, there's seats like Mike Siegel, for instance, in Texas, which Donna Imam, Pam Keith in a red to blue. I mean, Pam Keith's district itself could determine this entire election, presidential election. So it's not just that it's about this presidential, it's that we need that energy to help these other people, progressives who somehow made it through their primaries and, may not be getting the amount of help from the D-Trip that maybe other candidates are.
Right.
Marquita Bradshaw, for instance. I mean, that's going to be a very tough race, but the DS isn't helping her out, and she's the Senate candidate in Tennessee. Does she have more of a chance than Amy McGrath? I would say that they're probably going to
Probably.
Yeah.
Or what about in West Virginia? I haven't seen any polls. I was trying to look into Swearingen. What?
With Paula Jean.
Yeah. What are her chances?
I mean, I haven't been following West Virginia that much, but it's a populous state, and she's run several times before, and this is an unusual election, and turnout is enormously high, and she doesn't speak. She's known, in the state for being an advocate for clean energy, for real clean energy, I should say,
Yep.
Green energy. And she has a personal story, and I think that relates to folks. The question is that message being
getting out there?
Getting out there, and I think that's the same thing with Marquita. I'm not on the ground, so I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But
Mark from Chicago. Mark in from Chicago. I've been a longtime listener, but became a Majority Report member last month. For the first time, I decided to be an election judge in my local district in Illinois for Election Day. Wow. Are there things I should look out or expect? You know what? We will find resources for you. And I feel like I tweeted one out like a week or two ago. But let me give you this for both things. Thank you. Thank you for becoming a member, and thank you for being an election judge. We need them out there because things are going to get hairy. Simple Socialist. Sam, is it a coincidence Trump is on a hell of stimulants and now sounds like every guy on coke ever? No, I don't think so.
Sounds a little like Tim Pool. Just they've got this amount of energy, this like weaselly energy that just has they have to talk like this and oh my God. So they all have the same, it's like the Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, now Trump sound.
Seeing some vote blue no matter who types say they should pack the courts after the election, but only add 2 justices because 4 looks too brazen. That just seems crazy to me. If you're going to go for it, go for it. I agree. Like the idea that there's any human beings on the planet who are like, if you add 2, okay, but 4, forget it. I mean, that seems, I don't know. That doesn't, I mean, I guess the argument by adding 2 would be that you bring it to 6-5, right? And then you rely on Roberts to be the sort of like squish on some level. And you hope that Thomas or Alito, decide like, I want to live the life and go off and be, get paid or something like that in a bigger way or something. And then you get to fill that seat. I mean, that to me seems, I guess I can understand that theory, and I would take that over keep it 6-3. Mm-hmm. But that seems silly to me.
But it's at the end of the day, it's just a demographics game. And so if we're sitting here and this is all about betting on the future that is seemingly more progressive, you can't play that game without also doing that institutional support, because then the Republicans are going to do whatever they can to make sure that the next president is a Marco Rubio, or
right,
whoever their person is.
I mean, I think the reason why you go with 13 is because you say that's the number of circuit courts, and that seems to be more rational to me. Salt Lake, Sean, this is second last. I'm a stenographer, and I hear Social Security and workman's comps claims all day. One thing to consider is these programs are some of the most effective and robust forms of mutual aid we have currently, and they are on the brink. The urgency cannot be understated when it comes to the damage the Supreme Court will do in the years to come. The entire power of the broad left should be fighting the army we have now, not the movement we want in the future to save these programs. I am of a similar mind. And the final I am of the day. Wait, why did I just press that button? That's not what it is. Nomi, it was a pleasure. Folks should check out Nomi's show at 3 p.m. Matt, Brendan, good job today. The final I am. You see Romney's thoughts on the current state of our politics this morning? Just a brazen example of both sidism and equating Democrats' limp performative resistance to Trump's vile spewing of hate and conspiracies. What a freaking joke. Yes, I agree. Don't you realize he's a man of moral character, as I was told by Stuart Stevens? All right, folks, see you tomorrow.
Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna